So our scripture lesson this morning comes from, oh jeez, Lord. You know, it's innate. Jesus, Mary, and sweet Joseph. It's innate within us, right? All of this weekend, we've been talking together about a particular scripture. And we're going to dive in these moments of preaching and teaching and being together. And it's within the Gospel of Matthew. And the larger section is chapter 5, verses 43 to 48. But you'll recognize the piece that's relevant when we get there. So, Jesus begins. You're familiar, this is the Message version, by the way, but you may or may not be familiar with it, but this is what we're working off of. You're familiar with the old written law, love your friend, and its unwritten companion, hate your enemy. I'm challenging that. I'm telling you, love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the energies of prayer, for then you are working out of your true selves, your God-created selves. This is what God does. God gives the best to sun and to warm and to rain and to nourish to everyone, regardless. The good and the bad, the nice and the nasty. If all you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? Anybody can do that. If you simply say hello to those who greet you, do you expect a medal? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that. In a word, what I'm saying is grow up. You're kingdom subjects. Now live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously towards others the way God lives towards you. May God infuse that reading with new understanding in these moments. So I love church. I really do. I grew up in this denomination from my baptism to the camp I attended and worked at and fell in love at for the first time to the conference work and synod work even before seminary. Then the wonder of the words in seminary. I found a way to talk about what I loved, even as my heartstrings pulled towards the stories of Christ I heard in my local church growing up. After I had the deep privilege of serving a local church and inviting more into the stories and wonder and call of the gospel for justice in our settings. I love this denomination, the United Church of Christ, with all of my heart. But what's really clear to me is that I love Jesus more. There's a comfort in knowing this. That if our institutions and buildings and bylaws, if our ways of being and doing and stagnating, that if our human oddities and failures and formalities ever cease to become a place for the love of Christ Almighty to come rushing in like a mighty wind and topple over the tables of injustice, I know with whom I stand. And this time does feel like a time of reckoning, doesn't it? Maybe it's part of growing up. I'm not sure. Y'all wiser can tell me later. But don't tell me that you have it all figured out. Because God knows that's a lifelong process. The reckoning of who we are and what we're here to do. What's the reason of our being and becoming, and how do we live that out for the sake of the gospel in these prairies and mountains and plains and beyond in 2017. So I'm 31. I'm coming out about my age this year. Because it's not easy to be a younger person in church. Unless there's a youth event, I'm often one of the youngest, if not the youngest person in the room. But I've done a lot in this world for Christ and for church. Because there's no way that I could do anything other than this. I have served on a conference board, and as a synod delegate, and as a camp staffer. I've been at the local church and organized regional events and started an outside-the-box church-related nonprofit. I've visioned with a team of people about what the United Church of Christ is and will be in 10 years and how to get there. And now I have the deep, deep, deep privilege of serving the church at the national level as the coordinator for congregational assessment, support, and advancement. Despite the mouthful of the title, how I usually describe that to people is something along the lines of, I get to help love the church into who she's called to be. I get to witness Christianity popping up in new ways and figure out how to support it. I get to learn constantly beyond my own assumptions and comfort levels of what makes a community of faith and challenge others to do the same. And I love my job almost as much as I love the church, which is almost as much as I love Jesus. Woo. But in all that, because I'm 31 and I'm a millennial, I've also had the deep joy of witnessing my generation do some pretty wild and game-changing things in all realms of the workplace and church, working in their peer groups and beyond. When I came out of my undergrad, at that point they said that's what they said we needed just to get good jobs. And then I saw all my friends have a really, really hard time getting jobs at all. I saw them wander through a socially connected universe that enabled us to remain aware of the journeys of literally thousands of our peers. My generation moves around a lot for our careers. The towns we grew up in are not often the places we stick around. Does that happen here? We tend to work longer and start families later, and we want to revamp the whole system with a high five to our Gen X peers to be more effective. And throughout the course of all of that, in my peer group, there's been this documented Twitter struggle of what has become known as adulting. This performative thing that we did, pretending like we had it all together, like these tweets from folks in their 20s who are doing the work of adulting. 99% of being an adult is looking for an adultier adult to do the adulting. Please don't make me adult today. What's the use of being an adult if you don't exercise the power to have an ice cream sundae for dinner? To-do list. Get an orange kitten. Get a white kitten. Get a black kitten. Do your taxes. Being an adult is hard. You know you're getting kind of old and becoming an adult when you start sighing at teenagers. When it's 8:28 a.m. and you're already down for nap time. Is this adulting? To be fair, I'll be the first to say that I don't have it all together. I mess up in this whole growing up thing regularly. I think we all do. And I think I landed okay most of the time. Get a black kitten, like a cat. Get a cat, that'll remind me. Okay. I have the deep privilege of a supportive family who helped out along the way. A church that loved me into ministry and access to opportunities that I wouldn't be standing here without. I name that because I know that for some that is not the case. Let me be clear. There is no doubt that some are forced to adult much earlier than others. By family circumstances, by crisis, by necessity, by systems of oppression which force adulthood upon someone. Some are thrust forward into a world of sink or swim and do so by the strength of their own spirit, the connection of a community who's committed to their growth and the grace of God. In order to survive, they must. The other option is not survival. For others, adulting is optional. The abundance of opportunity in life, the privilege to choose to do those adulting things like pulling self together to do the continuous, never-ending work of growth into the very best version of self, pushing through the circumstances of conflict in such a way that learning for how to do it better next time. I have met those who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s who are just now learning how to adult, how to grow up and into themselves and into their communities. Make no mistake, this is hard work. Church. For some of us, it's time to choose how to adult better. Collectively, it's easy to choose stagnancy and the ease of doing things the way we've done them and forget the divine push to adult. But as Jesus near chided in this translation, we need to grow up and act like we're God's people in the world. Some of us get caught up in the pettiness of being human. We harbor resentments. God, forgive us. We hold back our gifts. Jesus, help us. We build barriers instead of bridges. Spirit, save us. We crawl into a hole of unknowing and neglect the work of the truth of where we are now and what we're called to do and be for the sake of the gospel and the kingdom. So when Christ calls us to attention, grow up. Choose to do so. Get creative. Get excited. Get ready. I alert you, no. I assure you. God's call for adulting for such a time as this will leave you shaking as you grow. The church needs to make bold decisions to continue to live into God's call for us. Beloveds, be not afraid to make bold decisions for the sake of the gospel and for the sake of those on the margins. Be not afraid to help them do that. Help others make bold decisions. Even when some people leave the congregation or the denomination, there are other options out there for a reason. Or hold their tithes to make a point. Let not the congregation hold God's realm hostage, or plant their feet stubborn and solid in the old ways. They are grieving a changing church, and it usually means that they are afraid. Beloved, be not afraid to say to God in these moments, here I am. Respond in those moments of engaging with those who are afraid and hurting and unsure of what comes next by loving them. People grow at their own speed and some much faster than others. Where are you in your growing and growing up? And how can you aim towards that place, the ever-receding horizon of potential that is before each one of us in the kingdom of God? There is an invitation to show our love of church and of Christ in how we treat each other and how we live out our faith in times like this. How we show up for folks who are on the margins, going to Standing Rock and being present alongside water protectors, listening and learning from those who are much different than we are, showing up for racial justice and caring for Mother Earth. All of this is showing a love of church and Christ. And in this work, acknowledging that there is more for each one of us to learn and grow into bettering ourselves for the sake of the kingdom, asking questions about what we have that's negotiable and what's really non-negotiable about who we are and how we church. Even in the challenge of growing up into leadership and financial struggle and feeling uncertain and anxious, what we know is that in all the laws and all the prophets and all the new covenanting and light bringing and still speaking in all of this, God is with us. When we grow up because we choose to, or because circumstances force us to choose to, God is with us. When we stretch across to love more broadly than we ever considered possible, God is with us. And we can live generously and graciously as God lives toward us. I say all this in the spirit of the oneness that calls us into being and becoming and invites us to the table at which we are united together in Christ. And I say all this in the name of God. Amen.